Hey guys, Joyboy here. Got another discussion type post for you today. I'd like to discuss Admiral Ryokugyu, also known as Green Bull commonly, and what we know about him and what we can potentially predict. So before I begin this, I'd like to clarify for those who may not know that Admiral Ryokugyu, or Green Bull, is the third and final admiral that has yet to be revealed in the One Piece universe. Given we only know his name and that he was recruited from the World Government Draft, you'd actually be surprised how much we can already guess about his appearance, personality, and powers. Alright, to begin with, whenever somebody is promoted to Admiral, they're given a code name. Some examples of these code names are the common names that you see for admirals, including Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji. What's cool about these names is that each one can be separated into two parts, an animal of some sort and a color. So for instance, Akainu can separate into red, dog. Now where it really starts to get cool is when you start looking into the symbology behind both the color and the animals chosen to represent each admiral. In almost every single case, the admiral can be described both personality and power-wise by their color and their animal. To get into the specifics of this, the color of the admiral is always representative of their power in some way, and their animal plus their color can symbolize their personality. So for the original three admirals, this was blatantly obvious. Akainu, the red dog, he's red, and his power is magma. Aokiji, the blue phoenix, and his power is ice. Kizaru is the yellow monkey, yellow, and his power is light. Even if we go into the new admirals, Admiral Fujitora, his color is purple or wisteria, and purple is commonly associated with gravity. So given that we know that the color represents the admiral's powers, there's really only three options for Admiral Greenbull: nature, plant, or life in general. It can be wind, or it could be eternity. A lot of people are under the misconception that green could possibly represent time, or at least I believe it to be a misconception because I've done my own research and can't find anywhere that says that time is represented by the color green. The color green actually represents eternity, and that actually refers to the fact that plant life or life in general is eternal. And that does not necessarily imply control over time, but rather longevity. So I'm going to come back to this idea a little bit later and tie it back in. But for now, let's move on to another topic, which is that the three original admirals were inspired from the legends of Momotaro, and specifically their animals and their aliases were inspired by this story. So given this, it's actually interesting to talk about something else first, which is how Ryokugyu is translated from Japanese into English. Um, this is something that not everyone knows and would take a little bit of digging to find, but actually Admiral Ryokugyu, which is commonly interpreted as Admiral Greenbull, that isn't necessarily an accurate translation. While it's been popularized to call him Green Bull, the actual translation would be more along the lines of green, insert either cow, bull, ox, or any of the above would fit the translation. So going back to the story of Momotaro, as I said previously, the aliases of the three original admirals, the dog, the pheasant, and the monkey, were inspired from the story of Momotaro. So the question then gets begged is, are Admiral Fujitora and Admiral Ryokugyu, are they also inspired from the same story? And as it turns out, there's actually a really great reference possibly to the two new admirals of One Piece in the story of Momotaro. There's actually mention of basically the ox tiger, because remember that, as I said previously, Ryokugyu can be translated as cow, bull, or ox, and Admiral Fujitora is the tiger. The ox tiger is actually a thing in Momotaro. So for those of you who don't know, an ox and a bull are practically the same thing. Both refer to a male cow. So now, given all that information, what can we guess that Green Bull's personality is going to be like? Well, according to things that I've read, the ox or the bull's personality type is very careful, very plotting. They're willing to take as long as they would like, or as long as they need to accomplish a goal. They're very strong-willed and independent, and they can't be told what to do, which is really interesting considering the relationship with Fujitora and the fact that he also has his own objectives as an admiral. Going back to the story of Momotaru, it's actually kind of interesting that the three original admirals represented companions of Momotaru as they were heading towards the Demon Kingdom or the Oni Kingdom, while the tiger and the ox actually represent the Oni themselves, as though the three original admirals and the tiger and the ox are on maybe different teams. Because you'll remember from the Dressrosa arc, there are multiple points in time where Fujitora could have, and as an admiral should have, tried to take down the Straw Hats, but he preferred to pretend as though he was upholding justice while secretly rooting for the Straw Hats to take down Doflamingo and to prove a point to the world government. I wonder if Admiral Greenbull is going to be the same and be a sort of um, in ways against what the world government stands for. So going back to Green Bull's potential powers, as I said previously, the Admiral's color represents his power. So as I said previously, the three potential powers Green Bull could have would be nature, wind, or eternity, which is sometimes interpreted as time. So something interesting to add on to this is that the three original admirals all had Logia types, all Logia type devil fruits. Um, but with the new guard coming in, that's no longer the case. Admiral Kizaru still is there with his light Logia type. However, Admiral Fujitora has the gravity paramecia type. So at this point, many speculate that Admiral Greenbull will have a zone type. But to add a further little wrinkle into this, we also know that of all the admirals, they all have a ridiculously overpowered fruit. And so I don't think that if he had a zone, it would be a regular zone. I think that it would have to be a very strong zone fruit. And while there doesn't seem to be any real difference between the regular kinds of zones, where they really do differentiate themselves is when you get into um, mythical zones. So given that the original admirals possess three rare Logia types, and Fujitora possesses a gravity paramecia, which can only really be rivaled as far as I'm aware, to Whitebeard's Earthquake Paramecia type, I would have to assume that if Ryokugyu had a zone type Devil Fruit, that it would have to be a mythical zone. Also, I've seen some people speculate that given the fact that his name is Green Bull, that if he has a zone type fruit, it might be related to a bull. I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, of every single admiral previously, each one has a code name with a color and an animal. The animal does not represent their powers at all. Aikunu's magma does not relate to a dog. Kizaru's monkey does not relate to his light. The pheasant does not relate to ice, and the tiger does not relate to gravity. So to assume that Green Bull's uh, the bull would represent his power at all just doesn't seem logical to me. In fact, I'd almost say that it would have to not represent his potential zone fruit. The other direction people take this is that the three new admirals might have a science theme, which is that Admiral Kizaru has light, Admiral Fujitora has gravity, and therefore Admiral Greenbull might have something science related along the lines of light and gravity. And this is where many people point to time as being a reference from the fact that green could represent eternity. This would give Admiral Greenbull some sort of time manipulation power, a similar, I guess, to Foxy, but stronger somehow. I'm really hesitant to believe such a theory. First of all, any time manipulation greater than Foxy's might be too overpowered. For instance, Hiro from the show Heroes, being able to go forward or go backwards in time without much limitations is just too overpowered. Second of all, uh, as I said previously, I don't believe that green necessarily represents time. As I said, it represents eternity, which is that life goes on forever. And this is often pointed at trees and how trees can grow pretty much for eternity. And so this doesn't have anything to do with going forward or going backwards or stopping time. It's more of the flow of time. So I'm hesitant to believe that Admiral Greenbull has any time related powers whatsoever. I think the much stronger tie to the color green will be the nature symbolism behind the color green, or just the life symbolism. Alright guys, so let's pause here for a second and collect what it is that we figured out so far. So I've researched and I've found that the three potential powers that Green Bull could have could relate to wind or nature and possibly time. We also know that it's seemingly most likely to be a zone type, and even greater than that, it's probably going to be a very powerful zone, which is going to be most likely a mythical zone. If you guys checked out my last theory, you should know my opinion about who has the wind Logia type. So I really am hesitant to believe that um, that Green Bull has a wind Logia, and to even further than that, I really doubt that he has any mythical zone whose main properties include the properties of wind. So with that excluded from our list of possibilities, we're left with a mythical zone that relates to nature or possibly time. While I personally think that it's going to be most likely related to nature, so a mythical zone type fruit that is related to nature. So you're basically thinking of something like Bulbasaur, a plant creature of some sort. While I think that that's most likely to be the case, I'm a people person, and so I like to keep everyone happy. So I'm actually going to give you guys an idea of what a possible mythical zone that could include both nature and time. So you guys got to be thinking at this point, what legendary mythical creature could possibly include both time and nature? And while this isn't necessarily set in stone, I've done a little bit of research on it, but I found this and I thought it was really interesting. There's actually a Pokemon that we know of that has both a nature and a time theme, and that's Celebi, which was a legendary Pokemon. From what I can find, Celebi was the guardian of the forest, also known as the voice of the forest, and he or she is based predominantly on tree sprites or tree spirits. It can also be described as basically a forest fairy. Um, Both of these concepts work the same, but I think as far as a mythical zone is concerned, the option of fairy or spirit is definitely in the running. And like I said, the cool little side note of this entire thing is that Celebi also had the ability to go forward and go backwards in time. And while, like I said, I don't think that Green Bull will have this power, or at least won't have a strong variation of this power, I do think that if you really do like the idea of time manipulation, that this type of inspiration or this type of solution as to what his powers could be will make everyone happy. So, if you guys want to know how exactly this combination of powers would work, given the nature and time themes, the coolest thing that I can think of would be similar to the first Hokage's wood style jutsu from Naruto. Basically, rather than operating or controlling time in general, Green Bull would actually only be able to speed up or slow down time for plants. So basically, progress their growth, their age, so that a plant which was only a couple days old could all of a sudden be 1,000 years old. And thus he can start slinging trees at you that have all of a sudden grown to amazing size or something along those lines. Just think First Hokage, and that would be a really cool application of both the nature and the time themes. Some of you might be thinking that a fairy might be kind of a lame power for a male admiral, But I'd just like to clarify for anybody out there who isn't aware, Green Bull's gender is not clarified yet. He can be either male or female. In fact, his name Green Bull, like I said, can be translated as ox or cow, but the general translation just means a cow. No gender specified. And in an SBS, when Oda talked about Green Bull, he actually did not specify a gender as well. So both of those signs could point to the idea that Green Bull may be a female. And if Green Bull is a female, this fairy power, I think, would become a lot more popular of an idea. Definitely fairies are more associated with females than males, but that isn't to say that he couldn't be a forest fairy as a male as well, sort of like an elf. At this point, I'd like to clarify that a lot of these ideas are common within the One Piece community. I simply just restated them for the purposes of education, for those who may not have read them or heard of them or had them explained in such a way before. The only